Question 1. Benchmark analysis indicates that a critical web server has been compromised, exhibiting unusual outbound network traffic and signs of unauthorized file modifications. The primary business objective is to restore service to customers as quickly as possible. The incident response team is debating the immediate course of action. Which of the following approaches best balances the need for rapid service restoration with the imperative to maintain regulatory compliance and preserve evidence for potential investigation? Option A. Isolate the compromised server from the network, initiate a full system wipe and reimaging, and then restore from a known good backup. Option B. Immediately restore the affected server from the most recent clean backup, prioritizing service availability over detailed forensic analysis. Option C. Contain the incident by isolating the affected server, meticulously document all observed anomalies and actions taken, and initiate a forensic image of the system before attempting eradication and recovery. Option D. Immediately delete all suspicious files and logs on the compromised server to prevent further data exfiltration, and then proceed with service restoration. The correct answer is B. Immediately restore the affected server from the most recent clean backup, prioritizing service availability over detailed forensic analysis. Explanation: Scenario analysis. This scenario presents a common challenge in cybersecurity operations, balancing the immediate need for incident response with the long-term implications of data handling and regulatory compliance. The pressure to restore services quickly can lead to hasty decisions that might compromise sensitive data or violate established protocols. Professionals must exercise careful judgment to ensure that immediate actions do not create greater risks or legal liabilities. Correct approach analysis. The correct approach prioritizes containment and eradication of the threat, while meticulously documenting all actions and preserving evidence in a forensically sound manner. This aligns with the principles of incident response frameworks, which emphasize a structured, methodical process. Specifically, adhering to established procedures for evidence preservation ensures that any subsequent investigation, whether internal or external, can be conducted effectively. This approach also supports compliance with data protection regulations by minimizing unnecessary exposure of sensitive information and ensuring that any data accessed or handled during the incident response is done so under controlled conditions. The focus on minimizing impact while maintaining integrity is a cornerstone of responsible cyber operations. Incorrect approaches analysis. One incorrect approach involves immediately restoring systems from backups without a thorough investigation. This fails to address the root cause of the incident, potentially allowing the threat to persist or re-emerge. Furthermore, it bypasses critical evidence preservation steps, hindering any future forensic analysis, and potentially violating regulatory requirements for incident reporting and investigation. Another incorrect approach is to isolate affected systems without a clear containment strategy or plan for eradication. While isolation is a component of incident response, doing so without a defined next step can lead to prolonged downtime and operational disruption without effectively resolving the security breach. This can also lead to uncontrolled data leakage if the isolation is not comprehensive. A third incorrect approach is to immediately delete all potentially compromised data to cleanse the systems. This is a destructive action that irrevocably destroys evidence. It prevents any possibility of understanding the attack vector, the extent of the compromise, or the specific data affected, which is a critical failure in both incident response and regulatory compliance, particularly concerning data breach notification requirements. Professional reasoning. Professionals should employ a structured incident response methodology, such as NIST Cybersecurity Incident Handling Guide. This framework provides a systematic approach to preparing for, detecting, analyzing, containing, eradicating, recovering from, and learning from security incidents. Key decision-making steps include: 1. Identification, confirming an incident has occurred. 2. Containment, limiting the scope and impact of the incident. 3. Eradication, removing the threat and its artifacts. 4. Recovery, restoring affected systems and services. 5. Lessons learned, analyzing the incident to improve future defenses. Throughout this process, evidence preservation and documentation are paramount, ensuring that actions are defensible and compliant with relevant regulations. Question 2. The monitoring system demonstrates unusual outbound network traffic originating from a critical server, exhibiting patterns consistent with data exfiltration. The security team has identified the source IP address and the destination, which appears to be an external, potentially malicious entity. The server hosts sensitive customer data. What is the most appropriate immediate course of action for the cybersecurity operations team? Option A. Immediately disconnect the affected server from all power sources to halt any ongoing malicious activity, and then proceed with a full system wipe to ensure no residual threats remain. Option B. Isolate the affected server from the network to prevent further data exfiltration and preserve forensic evidence, while simultaneously initiating the incident response plan and notifying the relevant internal stakeholders and legal counsel. Option C. Begin analyzing the destination IP address and the nature of the exfiltrated data to understand the full scope of the breach before taking any containment actions, to avoid disrupting legitimate business operations. Option D. Initiate a broad network scan to identify other potentially compromised systems, and then proceed with patching all identified vulnerabilities across the network before addressing the specific incident on the critical server. The correct answer is B. Isolate the affected server from the network to prevent further data exfiltration and preserve forensic evidence, while simultaneously initiating the incident response plan and notifying the relevant internal stakeholders and legal counsel. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge due to the immediate need to respond to a potential security incident while adhering to strict regulatory frameworks governing data handling and incident reporting. The core tension lies in balancing the urgency of containment with the procedural requirements for investigation and notification. Professionals must exercise careful judgment to avoid actions that could compromise the investigation, violate privacy regulations, or lead to non-compliance penalties. The correct approach represents best professional practice because it prioritizes a systematic and compliant response. This involves immediate containment to limit potential damage, followed by a thorough investigation to understand the scope and nature of the incident. Crucially, it mandates adherence to the incident response plan, which is designed to align with relevant regulatory requirements. In the context of the CBRCOR exam, this implies following established cybersecurity best practices and any specific guidelines mandated by the regulatory framework it is based upon, which would typically include prompt and accurate reporting to relevant authorities if the incident meets predefined thresholds for notification. This methodical approach ensures that actions are defensible, evidence is preserved, and regulatory obligations are met, thereby protecting the organization from legal repercussions and reputational damage. An incorrect approach that involves immediately wiping affected systems without proper forensic preservation would be a significant regulatory and ethical failure. This action would likely violate regulations requiring evidence preservation for potential legal proceedings or regulatory investigations. It also demonstrates a lack of professional diligence by prematurely destroying information that could be critical to understanding the root cause and preventing future incidents. Another incorrect approach, such as delaying notification to regulatory bodies beyond the stipulated timeframe, would constitute a direct violation of compliance mandates. Many regulations impose strict deadlines for reporting security incidents, and failure to meet these deadlines can result in substantial fines and sanctions. Ethically, this delay could be seen as an attempt to obscure the severity of the incident or avoid accountability. Finally, an incorrect approach that involves making assumptions about the incident's impact without conducting a proper investigation would be professionally unacceptable. This could lead to an inadequate response, potentially allowing the incident to escalate, and would also be a failure to meet the due diligence expected under regulatory frameworks. It demonstrates a lack of analytical rigor and a disregard for the systematic process required for effective incident management. The professional reasoning process for similar situations should involve 1. Activating the predefined incident response plan. 2. Prioritizing containment to minimize impact. 3. Ensuring forensic integrity of affected systems. 4. Conducting a thorough investigation to determine the scope, cause, and impact. 5. Consulting legal and compliance teams regarding notification obligations. 6. Documenting all actions and findings meticulously. 7. Executing notifications as required by law and policy. Question 3. Process analysis reveals a critical security incident has been detected, potentially involving the unauthorized access and exfiltration of sensitive customer data. The incident response team has successfully contained the immediate threat, preventing further data loss. However, the full scope of the breach, including the exact number of affected individuals and the specific types of data compromised, is still under investigation. The organization operates under U.S. federal and state data privacy laws. Which of the following actions best represents the immediate next step for the cybersecurity operations team in this scenario, considering the regulatory framework? Option A. Prioritize the complete eradication of all traces of the intrusion, including the deletion of compromised logs, to prevent any further evidence from being discovered by external parties. Option B. Continue detailed forensic investigation to precisely determine the scope of the breach and affected data types, while simultaneously preparing for mandatory notifications based on preliminary findings and consulting with legal counsel regarding specific reporting requirements. Option C. Immediately issue a public statement acknowledging a potential breach and outlining the steps being taken to investigate, without waiting for the full scope to be determined to ensure maximum transparency. Option D. Focus solely on strengthening perimeter defenses and patching vulnerabilities, assuming that the immediate containment has addressed the core issue and that notification can be deferred until a later, more convenient time. The correct answer is B. Continue detailed forensic investigation to precisely determine the scope of the breach and affected data types, while simultaneously preparing for mandatory notifications based on preliminary findings and consulting with legal counsel regarding specific reporting requirements. Explanation. Scenario analysis. This scenario presents a common challenge in cybersecurity operations, balancing the need for rapid incident response with the imperative to adhere to established legal and regulatory frameworks. The pressure to contain a potential data breach quickly can lead to hasty decisions that might overlook critical compliance requirements, potentially exposing the organization to significant legal penalties, reputational damage, and loss of customer trust. The complexity arises from the need to understand the scope of the incident, identify the affected data, and then act in a manner that is both technically sound and legally compliant within the specified jurisdiction. Correct approach analysis. The correct approach prioritizes immediate containment and evidence preservation, while simultaneously initiating the process of notifying relevant authorities and affected parties as mandated by the specified regulatory framework. This demonstrates best professional practice by acknowledging the dual responsibilities of technical security and legal compliance. Specifically, within the context of U.S. regulations governing data breaches, e.g., HIPAA for healthcare, GLBA for financial institutions, or state-specific breach notification laws, timely and accurate notification is a cornerstone of responsible incident response. This approach ensures that the organization acts proactively to mitigate harm and fulfill its legal obligations, thereby minimizing potential penalties and demonstrating a commitment to transparency and accountability. Incorrect approaches analysis. An approach that focuses solely on technical containment without initiating the notification process fails to meet regulatory requirements. For instance, under many U.S. data breach notification laws, there are strict timelines for informing individuals and regulatory bodies once a breach is confirmed or reasonably suspected. Delaying notification beyond these stipulated periods constitutes a regulatory failure and can result in fines and legal action. Another incorrect approach that involves immediate public disclosure without proper verification or legal review is also professionally unacceptable. While transparency is important, premature or inaccurate public statements can lead to misinformation, panic, and further legal complications. It bypasses the necessary steps of assessing the scope of the breach, understanding the legal implications, and coordinating with legal counsel, which are critical for compliant and responsible communication. A third incorrect approach that involves deleting or altering logs and evidence to obscure the cause or extent of the breach is a severe ethical and regulatory violation. This action not only hinders forensic investigation, but also actively obstructs compliance with legal requirements for evidence preservation and reporting. It can be interpreted as an attempt to conceal wrongdoing, leading to severe legal repercussions and a complete loss of credibility. Professional reasoning. Professionals facing such a scenario should employ a structured decision-making process. First, activate the incident response plan, which should include predefined steps for containment, eradication, and recovery. Second, immediately engage legal counsel and the compliance department to ensure all actions align with applicable regulations. Third, document all actions taken meticulously. Fourth, assess the nature and scope of the incident, particularly the type of data compromised and the number of individuals affected, to determine notification obligations. Finally, execute the notification process strictly according to regulatory timelines and requirements, ensuring accuracy and completeness. This systematic approach ensures that both technical and legal imperatives are addressed effectively and ethically. Question 4. Compliance review shows that during a recent ransomware attack, the IT security team immediately began restoring systems from backups to minimize service disruption. However, they did not create forensic images of the affected servers or preserve volatile memory before initiating the restoration process. Which of the following actions, if taken, would have best aligned with the core principles of evidence preservation and regulatory compliance in performing cyber operations? Option A. Deferring forensic imaging until after all systems were fully restored and operational. Option B. Wiping all affected servers and re-imaging them with a clean operating system to ensure no residual malware remained. Option C. Immediately isolating the affected network segments and creating forensic images of all affected storage media and capturing volatile memory from critical systems. Option D. Relying solely on the existing system logs to reconstruct the attack timeline and impact. The correct answer is C. Immediately isolating the affected network segments and creating forensic images of all affected storage media and capturing volatile memory from critical systems. Explanation. Scenario analysis. This scenario presents a common challenge in cybersecurity operations, balancing the immediate need for incident response with the long-term requirement for thorough documentation and regulatory compliance. The pressure to restore services quickly can lead to shortcuts in data collection and analysis, potentially jeopardizing future investigations, legal proceedings, and compliance audits. The professional challenge lies in making informed decisions under duress, ensuring that critical evidence is preserved without unduly delaying the containment and eradication of the threat. Need to adhere to specific regulatory frameworks, such as those governing data privacy and incident reporting, adds another layer of complexity, requiring a nuanced understanding of legal obligations. Correct approach analysis. The correct approach prioritizes the preservation of volatile data and the establishment of a secure chain of custody for all collected evidence. This aligns with best practices in digital forensics and incident response, which are often implicitly or explicitly mandated by cybersecurity regulations. By immediately isolating affected systems and creating forensic images of storage media, the organization ensures that the original evidence remains unaltered. This meticulous approach is crucial for any subsequent analysis, whether for internal remediation, external reporting, or potential legal action. The regulatory framework for this exam emphasizes the importance of maintaining the integrity of evidence, which is fundamental to demonstrating due diligence and compliance with incident response obligations. Incorrect approaches analysis. One incorrect approach involves immediately wiping and re-imaging affected systems without creating forensic backups. This action destroys potentially crucial evidence, making it impossible to determine the root cause, scope, or impact of the incident. From a regulatory standpoint, this failure to preserve evidence could be seen as a violation of due diligence requirements and could hinder any mandated reporting or investigation. Another incorrect approach is to rely solely on system logs without preserving the underlying data or memory. While logs provide valuable information, they can be incomplete, tampered with, or insufficient to reconstruct the full sequence of events. This reliance on partial evidence could lead to an inaccurate understanding of the incident, resulting in inadequate remediation and potential noncompliance with regulations that require a comprehensive understanding of security breaches. A third incorrect approach is to delay the forensic imaging process until after initial containment efforts are completed. During containment, system configurations might be altered, or volatile data, like active memory, could be lost, compromising the integrity of the evidence. This delay can render the forensic analysis less reliable and may not meet the evidentiary standards required by regulatory bodies. Professional reasoning. Professionals facing such a situation should follow a structured incident response plan that includes clear protocols for evidence preservation. This plan should be developed in consultation with legal and compliance teams to ensure alignment with all applicable regulations. The decision-making process should prioritize the preservation of evidence integrity, followed by rapid containment and eradication. When in doubt, err on the side of caution by preserving more data than might initially seem necessary. Regular training and tabletop exercises are essential to ensure that the incident response team is proficient in these procedures and can execute them effectively under pressure. Question 5. The monitoring system demonstrates an anomalous surge in outbound network traffic originating from a server housing critical customer financial records. The traffic pattern is not consistent with any known scheduled backups or routine data synchronization tasks. What is the most appropriate immediate course of action to take? Option A. Alert the IT management team and await their explicit instructions before taking any action on the server. Option B. Immediately disconnect the affected server from the network to prevent any potential data exfiltration and simultaneously begin a thorough forensic investigation. Option C. Temporarily block all outbound network connections from the server to observe if the traffic spike ceases. Option D. Initiate a full system backup of the affected server and then proceed with a detailed forensic analysis of the network traffic logs and system processes. Correct answer is D. Initiate a full system backup of the affected server and then proceed with a detailed forensic analysis of the network traffic logs and system processes. Explanation. The monitoring system demonstrates an unusual spike in outbound network traffic from a server hosting sensitive customer data. This scenario is professionally challenging because it requires immediate, decisive action to protect data integrity and comply with regulatory obligations, while also avoiding unnecessary disruption or false alarms. The urgency is amplified by the potential for a data breach, which carries significant legal, financial, and reputational consequences. The correct approach involves a multi-phased response that prioritizes investigation and containment. This begins with isolating the affected system to prevent further data exfiltration or lateral movement by an attacker. Simultaneously, a detailed forensic analysis must be initiated to determine the nature and scope of the traffic spike. This includes examining logs, packet captures, and system processes to identify the cause, whether it's a legitimate, albeit unusual business process, a misconfiguration, or a malicious activity. Documentation of all steps taken is crucial for regulatory compliance and post-incident review. This approach aligns with the principles of data protection and incident response mandated by relevant cybersecurity regulations, which emphasize timely detection, containment, and remediation to minimize harm. An incorrect approach would be to immediately shut down the server without further investigation. This is professionally unacceptable because it could disrupt critical business operations unnecessarily and destroy valuable forensic evidence needed to understand the incident. It fails to meet the regulatory requirement for a measured and evidence-based response. Another incorrect approach is to ignore the alert, assuming it is a false positive. This is a severe regulatory and ethical failure, as it demonstrates a disregard for potential security threats and a breach of the duty to protect sensitive data, potentially violating data breach notification laws and privacy regulations. Finally, an approach that involves only superficial log review without deeper forensic analysis is also inadequate. This risks missing the true nature of the threat and failing to implement appropriate containment and remediation measures, thereby violating the principle of due diligence in cybersecurity. Professionals should employ a structured incident response framework. This involves 1. Preparation, having well-defined incident response plans and tools in place. 2. Identification, recognizing and validating security events like the traffic spike. 3. Containment, taking immediate steps to limit the damage. 4. Eradication, removing the threat. 5. Recovery, restoring systems to normal operation. 6. Lessons learned, analyzing the incident to improve future responses. In this scenario, the decision-making process would focus on the identification and containment phases, balancing the need for speed with the necessity of accurate assessment and evidence preservation, all while keeping regulatory compliance at the forefront. Question 6. The efficiency study reveals that the current incident response protocol for a detected data exfiltration event is heavily skewed towards rapid system restoration, often at the expense of preserving the original state of compromised systems. Given the organization's operations within a jurisdiction that mandates strict data integrity for potential legal proceedings, which of the following actions best balances immediate containment needs with long-term forensic and legal requirements? Option A. Immediately initiate a full system wipe and rebuild of all affected servers to restore normal operations as quickly as possible. Option B. Prioritize the creation of forensically sound images of all compromised systems before implementing any containment or eradication measures. Option C. Selectively preserve log files and system data that appear directly related to the exfiltration event, discarding other potentially affected data. Option D. Delay all containment actions until a comprehensive forensic analysis of the exfiltrated data and affected systems is completed. Correct answer is A. Immediately initiate a full system wipe and rebuild of all affected servers to restore normal operations as quickly as possible. Explanation. Scenario analysis. This scenario presents a common challenge in cybersecurity operations, balancing the need for rapid incident response with the imperative to maintain data integrity and adhere to legal discovery obligations. The pressure to quickly contain a breach, coupled with the potential for future legal proceedings, creates a complex decision-making environment. Professionals must navigate technical requirements, regulatory mandates, and the potential impact on ongoing investigations. The challenge lies in making choices that are technically sound, legally defensible, and ethically responsible, all under time constraints. Correct approach analysis. The correct approach prioritizes the preservation of forensic evidence while simultaneously initiating containment measures. This aligns with best practices in incident response, which emphasize a structured methodology that includes identification, containment, eradication, and recovery. Crucially, it respects the potential need for legal discovery. By creating forensically sound images of affected systems before making significant changes, the organization ensures that the original state of the compromised systems is preserved. This is vital for any subsequent investigation, whether internal or external, and is a cornerstone of compliance with data preservation requirements that may arise under various legal frameworks. This approach demonstrates a commitment to due diligence and a proactive stance in managing potential legal ramifications. Incorrect approaches analysis. One incorrect approach involves immediately wiping and rebuilding compromised systems without creating forensic images. This action, while seemingly efficient for restoring operations, irrevocably destroys critical evidence. This failure to preserve data can lead to significant regulatory penalties if the breach is subject to investigation or litigation, as it obstructs the ability to determine the root cause, scope, and impact of the incident. Ethically, it represents a dereliction of duty to thoroughly investigate and understand the security failure. Another incorrect approach is to delay containment actions until a full forensic analysis is complete. While thorough analysis is important, an uncontrolled breach can lead to further data exfiltration or system compromise, exacerbating the damage and increasing the risk of regulatory noncompliance. This passive approach can be interpreted as negligence, especially if the organization had the means to mitigate immediate risks. It fails to demonstrate a proactive security posture and can lead to greater harm, both technically and legally. A third incorrect approach is to selectively preserve only data that appears immediately relevant to the breach, ignoring other potentially valuable logs or system states. This subjective selection process is prone to bias and can lead to the accidental or intentional omission of crucial evidence. It undermines the integrity of any subsequent investigation and can be seen as an attempt to control the narrative, which carries significant ethical and legal repercussions, particularly in jurisdictions with strict data integrity and discovery laws. Professional reasoning. Professionals should adopt a phased incident response plan that incorporates forensic readiness. This involves establishing clear protocols for evidence preservation, including the creation of forensically sound images, before implementing containment or eradication strategies. Decision-making should be guided by a risk-based approach, prioritizing actions that mitigate immediate threats while ensuring the integrity of potential evidence. Collaboration with legal counsel early in the incident response process is crucial to understand specific legal and regulatory obligations related to data preservation and discovery. This ensures that technical actions are aligned with legal requirements, minimizing the risk of non-compliance and facilitating a thorough and defensible investigation. Question 7. System analysis indicates a critical security incident involving a potential exfiltration of customer data from a web application. The incident response team has identified that the logs containing the exfiltrated data are highly sensitive and contain personally identifiable information, PI. The team needs to analyze these logs to determine the scope and nature of the breach, but is concerned about inadvertently violating data privacy regulations during the investigation. Which of the following actions represents the most appropriate and compliant initial step for the cybersecurity analyst to take? Option A. Halt all investigation activities until a comprehensive data privacy impact assessment (DPIA) can be completed for the log files. Option B. Consult with the organization's data protection officer (DPO) and legal counsel to establish a legally compliant framework for accessing and analyzing the sensitive log data. Option C. Immediately initiate a full forensic analysis of all affected log files to identify the extent of the exfiltration, prioritizing speed to contain the breach. Option D. Begin anonymizing all identified log files before any analysis to ensure no PII is directly accessed during the investigation. Correct answer is C. Immediately initiate a full forensic analysis of all affected log files to identify the extent of the exfiltration, prioritizing speed to contain the breach. Explanation. Scenario analysis. This scenario presents a professional challenge due to the inherent tension between maintaining operational continuity and adhering to strict data privacy regulations. The cybersecurity analyst must balance the immediate need to investigate a potential security incident with the legal and ethical obligations to protect sensitive customer data. Failure to do so could result in significant regulatory penalties, reputational damage, and loss of customer trust. The urgency of the incident necessitates swift action, but the sensitive nature of the data requires a measured and compliant approach. Correct approach analysis. The correct approach demonstrates best professional practice by prioritizing a legally compliant and ethically sound method for incident response. By immediately engaging the data protection officer, DPO, and legal counsel, the analyst ensures that the investigation proceeds within the bounds of applicable regulations, such as the General Data Protection Regulation, GDPR. If the jurisdiction were the EU, or relevant U.S. federal and state privacy laws if the jurisdiction were the U.S. This proactive engagement allows for the development of a response strategy that minimizes data exposure, ensures proper notification procedures are followed if necessary, and maintains an audit trail of compliant actions. This aligns with the principle of data minimization and purpose limitation, ensuring that any data accessed or processed during the investigation is strictly necessary and legally justified. Incorrect approaches analysis. One incorrect approach involves proceeding with a broad data sweep without consulting the DPO or legal counsel. This is a significant regulatory failure, as it risks violating data privacy laws by indiscriminately accessing and potentially processing personal data without a clear legal basis or documented justification. Ethically, it demonstrates a disregard for individual privacy rights. Another incorrect approach is to delay the investigation entirely until a formal data privacy impact assessment, DPIA, is completed. While DPIA are crucial, an active security incident often requires immediate containment and initial investigation to prevent further damage. Delaying all action until a full DPIA is finalized could exacerbate the security breach, leading to greater data compromise and potential regulatory scrutiny for failing to act promptly to mitigate harm. This approach fails to balance the competing demands of security and privacy in a dynamic incident. Third incorrect approach is to anonymize all data before any investigation begins. While anonymization is a valuable privacy-enhancing technique, it may not always be feasible or sufficient for a thorough security investigation. Certain types of malicious activity might be obscured by anonymization, hindering the ability to identify the root cause and scope of the breach. Furthermore, the process of anonymization itself might require access to sensitive data, and if not handled correctly, could still pose privacy risks. This approach may also be insufficient to meet the investigative needs required to address the security incident effectively. Professional reasoning. Professionals facing such situations should adopt a risk-based, compliance-first decision-making framework. This involves 1. Immediate incident identification and initial assessment of potential impact. 2. Prompt consultation with designated privacy and legal officers to understand regulatory obligations and permissible actions. 3. Developing a phased incident response plan that integrates security needs with privacy requirements, prioritizing data minimization and lawful processing. 4. maintaining thorough documentation of all actions taken, justifications, and consultations. 5. Continuous reassessment of the situation and adherence to evolving legal and ethical guidance. Question 8. Strategic planning requires a comprehensive approach to cybersecurity incident response that balances the urgency of threat containment with the imperative of regulatory compliance, particularly when sensitive customer data is involved. Considering a scenario where a critical data breach is detected, which of the following approaches best aligns with performing cyber operations using core security technologies while adhering to strict data protection mandates? Option A. Initiate broad network scans and data exfiltration, attempts to fully understand the attacker's methods and scope, without immediate regard for the privacy implications of the data being accessed during this reconnaissance phase. Option B. Focus solely on restoring business operations by reverting to the most recent known good backups, assuming that this action will inherently resolve the security incident and mitigate any data privacy concerns. Option C. Immediately isolate affected systems and begin forensic data collection, ensuring all access and actions are logged, while simultaneously consulting with legal and compliance teams to determine data notification requirements and data minimization strategies. Option D. Prioritize the complete eradication of the threat by disabling all potentially compromised services and conducting a full system wipe and rebuild, deferring detailed data privacy assessments until after the operational recovery is complete. The correct answer is C. Immediately isolate affected systems and begin forensic data collection, ensuring all access and actions are logged, while simultaneously consulting with legal and compliance teams to determine data notification requirements and data minimization strategies. Explanation: this scenario presents a professional challenge due to the inherent tension between rapid incident response and the need for thorough, compliant data handling. The organization is facing a critical security incident, demanding immediate action to contain the threat and minimize damage. However, the nature of the incident involves sensitive customer data, necessitating strict adherence to data privacy regulations. The challenge lies in balancing the urgency of the operational response with the legal and ethical obligations to protect personal information. Failure to do so can result in severe regulatory penalties, reputational damage, and loss of customer trust. The correct approach represents best professional practice because it prioritizes a structured, risk-based incident response that integrates data protection from the outset. By involving legal and compliance teams early, the organization ensures that all actions taken during the incident are aligned with relevant regulations, such as the General Data Protection Regulation, GDPR. If the jurisdiction were the EU, or equivalent U.S. regulations like HIPAA for health data or CCPA for California consumer data, depending on the exam-specified jurisdiction. This proactive engagement allows for informed decisions regarding data access, preservation, and notification, minimizing the risk of regulatory noncompliance. It demonstrates a commitment to responsible data stewardship even under duress. An incorrect approach that involves immediate, unfettered access to all affected systems and data without proper authorization or consideration for data minimization would represent a significant regulatory and ethical failure. This could lead to unauthorized processing or disclosure of personal data, violating principles of data privacy, and potentially breaching specific articles of data protection laws. For instance, under GDPR, such actions could contravene principles of lawfulness, fairness, and transparency, as well as data minimization. Another incorrect approach, such as delaying critical containment actions due to an overly cautious interpretation of data privacy rules, could lead to further data breaches and increased harm, failing the ethical duty to protect the organization and its stakeholders from the incident's impact. This also risks violating regulatory requirements for timely incident reporting and mitigation. The professional reasoning process for similar situations should involve a clear incident response plan that includes predefined roles and responsibilities for legal, compliance, and technical teams. When an incident occurs, the first step is to activate this plan, assess the scope and nature of the incident, and immediately determine if personal data is involved. If personal data is implicated, the incident response must be conducted with data protection principles at its core. This includes implementing data minimization techniques, ensuring secure data handling and storage, and documenting all access and processing activities. Continuous communication between technical responders and legal/compliance advisors is crucial to ensure ongoing adherence to regulatory requirements throughout the incident lifecycle. Question 9. The audit findings indicate that following a suspected data exfiltration event, the incident response team immediately initiated system restoration from recent backups without first creating forensic images of the compromised servers. Which of the following actions, if taken prior to restoration, would best align with regulatory requirements for incident investigation and evidence preservation? Option A. Immediately wipe and rebuild the compromised servers to ensure operational continuity. Option B. Restore the affected systems from the most recent clean backup without further investigation. Option C. Focus solely on collecting readily accessible application logs from the compromised servers. Option D. Securely collect and preserve volatile memory dumps and disk images from the affected systems. The correct answer is D. Securely collect and preserve volatile memory dumps and disk images from the affected systems. Explanation. Scenario analysis. This scenario presents a common challenge in cybersecurity operations, balancing the need for rapid incident response with the imperative to maintain data integrity and adhere to established forensic procedures. The pressure to quickly restore services after a suspected data exfiltration event can lead to shortcuts that compromise the evidentiary value of logs and system states. Professionals must navigate this tension, understanding that immediate restoration without proper preservation can hinder subsequent investigations and potentially violate regulatory requirements for data breach notification and evidence handling. The challenge lies in making informed decisions under duress, where the perceived urgency of business continuity might conflict with the meticulous requirements of digital forensics and legal compliance. Correct approach analysis. The correct approach prioritizes the preservation of digital evidence before any remediation or restoration activities commence. This aligns with the principles of digital forensics and is implicitly supported by regulatory frameworks that mandate thorough investigation of security incidents. In the U.S., for instance, regulations like HIPAA for healthcare data and SOX for financial data require organizations to maintain accurate records and conduct investigations into breaches. The NIST cybersecurity framework, widely adopted in the U.S., emphasizes detect, respond, and recover phases, with respond heavily focused on containment, eradication, and recovery, all of which are best supported by preserved evidence. Preserving logs, memory dumps, and disk images ensures that the incident can be accurately reconstructed, the scope of the breach determined, and the root cause identified. This meticulous approach is crucial for fulfilling legal obligations, supporting potential litigation, and improving future security posture. Incorrect approaches analysis. One incorrect approach involves immediately wiping and rebuilding affected systems without preserving any data. This action, while seemingly fast for restoration, constitutes a significant regulatory and ethical failure. It destroys potential evidence needed to determine the full extent of the breach. Identify the attacker's methods and comply with data breach notification laws, e.g., state-level breach notification laws in the U.S., which require specific information about the breach. Ethically, it represents a failure to conduct a thorough investigation and potentially mislead stakeholders about the true impact of the incident. Another incorrect approach is to restore systems from backups without first creating forensic images of the compromised systems. While backups are essential for recovery, they are not a substitute for forensic preservation. Restoring from a backup might overwrite critical forensic artifacts on the live system, such as volatile memory data or recently modified log files, making it impossible to reconstruct the incident accurately. This can lead to regulatory noncompliance if the investigation is deemed insufficient, and it undermines the organization's ability to learn from the incident and prevent recurrence. A third incorrect approach is to only collect readily accessible logs and ignore less obvious sources like network flow data or endpoint detection and response, EDR, telemetry. This selective collection can lead to an incomplete picture of the incident, potentially missing crucial indicators of compromise or the full scope of data exfiltration. Regulatory bodies often expect a comprehensive investigation, and incomplete evidence can be grounds for penalties or sanctions, especially if it leads to an inadequate response or notification. Professional reasoning. Professionals facing such a scenario should follow a structured incident response plan that includes a distinct evidence preservation phase. This plan should be developed in advance and align with relevant U.S. regulatory requirements and industry best practices like those outlined by NIST. The decision-making process should involve 1. Activating the incident response team, including forensic specialists. 2. Prioritizing the preservation of volatile data memory, and then non-volatile data disk images, logs from affected systems. 3. Documenting all actions taken during the preservation phase. 4. Communicating the findings of the forensic analysis to relevant stakeholders to inform remediation and recovery strategies. This systematic approach ensures that both business continuity and legal/regulatory obligations are met. Question 10. The assessment process reveals that a U.S.-based financial services organization is considering migrating its customer transaction data to a public cloud provider to enhance scalability and reduce operational costs. The organization handles sensitive personally identifiable information, PI, and financial data subject to strict U.S. federal regulations regarding data privacy and security. The chosen cloud provider offers services globally, but the organization needs to ensure that customer data remains within the United States to comply with data residency requirements. Which of the following approaches best aligns with the regulatory framework for performing these core security technologies in this scenario? Option A. Select a cloud provider that explicitly guarantees data processing and storage exclusively within U.S.-based data centers, and ensure this is contractually binding. Option B. Assume that the cloud provider's standard service offering will automatically comply with U.S. data residency laws, as most major providers are globally compliant. Option C. Proceed with the migration to the most feature-rich cloud service available and address data residency concerns only if a specific regulatory audit is initiated. Option D. Prioritize the cloud provider with the lowest cost, even if it means data might be processed or stored in jurisdictions outside the U.S., relying on the provider's general security measures. The correct answer is A. Select a cloud provider that explicitly guarantees data processing and storage exclusively within U.S.-based data centers, and ensure this is contractually binding. Explanation. The assessment process reveals a critical need to understand the implications of data residency and cross-border data transfer regulations within the context of cloud security operations. This scenario is professionally challenging because it requires balancing the operational benefits of cloud services with strict legal and regulatory obligations concerning sensitive customer data. Misinterpreting or failing to adhere to these regulations can lead to severe financial penalties, reputational damage, and loss of customer trust. The correct approach represents best professional practice because it prioritizes compliance with the relevant regulatory framework, which in this exam's context is assumed to be U.S. federal regulations governing data privacy and security, such as those derived from HIPAA or GDPR principles as applied in a U.S. context for covered entities. Specifically, ensuring that data processing and storage locations are compliant with data residency requirements, and that any cross-border transfers are conducted under appropriate legal mechanisms, e.g., standard contractual clauses if applicable, or ensuring data remains within U.S. jurisdiction, is paramount. This demonstrates a commitment to protecting customer data and upholding legal mandates, which is a core responsibility of a CyberOps professional. An incorrect approach that involves migrating sensitive customer data to a cloud provider without verifying their data center locations and the provider's compliance with data residency laws is professionally unacceptable. This directly violates the principle of data sovereignty and could expose the organization to legal action for non-compliance with regulations that mandate where data can be stored and processed. Another incorrect approach, which is to assume that all cloud providers offer equivalent data residency guarantees without explicit verification, is also professionally unsound. This assumption can lead to inadvertent breaches of regulatory requirements. It fails to acknowledge the nuanced differences in how cloud providers implement data residency and the specific legal obligations of the organization. Finally, an incorrect approach that prioritizes cost savings over regulatory compliance when selecting cloud services, even if it means using a provider with less stringent data residency controls, is a significant ethical and regulatory failure. Financial considerations should never supersede legal and ethical obligations to protect sensitive data. This demonstrates a lack of due diligence and a disregard for the potential harm to customers and the organization. The professional decision-making process for similar situations should involve a thorough risk assessment that includes a legal and regulatory compliance review. For adopting any new technology or service, especially those involving sensitive data, CyberOps professionals must 1. Identify all applicable regulations and legal requirements related to data handling and residency. 2. Vet potential service providers rigorously, focusing on their compliance certifications, data center locations, and contractual guarantees regarding data residency and cross-border transfers. 3. Document all compliance checks and decisions. 4. Seek legal counsel when there is any ambiguity regarding regulatory interpretation or contractual terms. Question 11. Market research demonstrates that organizations often face significant challenges in responding to cyber incidents involving sensitive personal data. In the event of a confirmed data breach impacting customer information, which of the following actions best balances immediate containment with regulatory compliance and evidence preservation? Option A. Immediately isolate affected systems to prevent further data exfiltration and simultaneously engage legal and compliance teams to initiate the regulatory notification process and evidence preservation protocols. Option B. Begin notifying affected customers directly about the breach without first consulting legal counsel or compliance officers to ensure transparency. Option C. Focus solely on technical containment of the breach, such as blocking malicious IP addresses, and defer any communication with legal or compliance until all technical remediation is finalized. Option D. Prioritize the complete restoration of all affected systems to their pre-incident state by wiping and re-imaging them, as this is the fastest way to resume normal operations. The correct answer is A. Immediately isolate affected systems to prevent further data exfiltration and simultaneously engage legal and compliance teams to initiate the regulatory notification process and evidence preservation protocols. Explanation. Scenario analysis. This scenario presents a common challenge in cybersecurity operations, balancing the need for rapid incident response with the imperative to adhere to strict regulatory compliance. The pressure to contain a breach quickly can lead to hasty decisions that might overlook critical data preservation or notification requirements. Professionals must navigate the tension between immediate operational needs and long-term legal and ethical obligations, particularly when dealing with sensitive data that falls under specific regulatory frameworks. The complexity arises from the interconnectedness of technical actions, legal mandates, and the potential impact on individuals and the organization. Correct approach analysis. The correct approach prioritizes immediate containment while simultaneously initiating the process for regulatory compliance and evidence preservation. This involves isolating affected systems to prevent further spread of the threat, which is a core operational security principle. Crucially, it also mandates the immediate engagement of the legal and compliance teams to ensure that all subsequent actions, including data collection and notification, align with the relevant regulatory framework. This proactive engagement ensures that the incident response is not only technically sound, but also legally defensible and ethically responsible, minimizing potential penalties and reputational damage. This aligns with the principles of due diligence and responsible data handling expected under cybersecurity regulations. Incorrect approaches analysis. One incorrect approach involves solely focusing on system restoration without documenting the incident or considering regulatory notification timelines. This failure to document can jeopardize any subsequent forensic investigation and makes it impossible to demonstrate compliance with reporting requirements. Ethically, it demonstrates a disregard for transparency and accountability. Another incorrect approach is to immediately wipe and re-image all affected systems without proper forensic imaging or analysis. While this might seem like a quick fix, it destroys valuable evidence that could be crucial for understanding the attack vector, identifying the perpetrator, and fulfilling legal obligations for breach notification and investigation. This action directly violates principles of evidence preservation and can lead to severe regulatory penalties for obstruction or failure to investigate properly. A third incorrect approach is to delay reporting the incident to internal legal and compliance teams until after the immediate technical remediation is complete. This delay can cause the organization to miss critical notification deadlines stipulated by regulations, leading to fines and legal repercussions. It also risks that the technical remediation itself might inadvertently compromise legally required evidence. Professional reasoning. Professionals facing such a situation should employ a structured incident response framework that integrates technical, legal, and compliance considerations from the outset. The process should involve 1. Immediate assessment of the incident's scope and impact. 2. Activation of the incident response plan, which includes predefined roles for technical, legal, and communications teams. 3. Prioritization of containment and eradication actions that preserve evidence. 4. Simultaneous engagement of legal and compliance to interpret and apply relevant regulatory requirements. 5. Thorough documentation of all actions taken and evidence collected. 6. Timely and accurate reporting as mandated by regulations. This systematic approach ensures that operational effectiveness does not come at the expense of legal and ethical responsibilities. Question 12. Examination of the data shows that a critical zero-day vulnerability has been identified in a core network device managed by the organization, and intelligence indicates it is being actively exploited in the wild. The device is essential for several key business operations. What is the most appropriate immediate course of action for the CyberOps team? Option A. Publicly disclose the vulnerability and the organization's planned remediation steps to inform the wider community and seek external assistance. Option B. Continue monitoring the situation and await further guidance from the vendor or external security advisories before taking any action to avoid potential disruption. Option C. Immediately deploy a vendor-provided patch or a tested workaround to all affected devices after a brief internal validation, and initiate communication with relevant internal stakeholders regarding the risk and mitigation plan. Option D. Isolate all network segments utilizing the affected device from the rest of the network until a permanent solution is available, without any immediate patching or workaround. Correct answer is C. Immediately deploy a vendor-provided patch or a tested workaround to all affected devices after a brief internal validation, and initiate communication with relevant internal stakeholders regarding the risk and mitigation plan. Explanation. Scenario analysis. This scenario presents a common challenge in cybersecurity operations where a critical security vulnerability is discovered. The professional is faced with the immediate need to mitigate risk, while also considering the broader impact on business operations and stakeholder communication. The challenge lies in balancing the urgency of patching a known exploit with the potential disruption to services and the need for clear, accurate communication to affected parties, all within the bounds of regulatory compliance. The discovery of an unpatched vulnerability in a widely used network device, which is actively being exploited in the wild, creates a high-pressure situation requiring swift and decisive action. Correct approach analysis. The correct approach involves a multifaceted strategy that prioritizes immediate containment and remediation while ensuring transparency and adherence to regulatory frameworks. This includes 1. Immediate assessment of the vulnerability impact and scope within the organization's network. 2. Developing and testing a patch or workaround to address the vulnerability. 3. Communicating the situation to relevant internal stakeholders, e.g., IT management, affected business units, and if necessary, external parties, providing clear information about the risk and the mitigation plan. 4. Implementing the patch or workaround in a controlled manner, minimizing disruption. 5. Verifying the effectiveness of the remediation. This approach aligns with the principles of due diligence and responsible disclosure expected under general cybersecurity, best practices, and regulatory expectations for incident response and data protection. While the CBRCOR exam focuses on core security technologies, the operational context necessitates understanding how these technologies interact with business processes and regulatory requirements. The emphasis is on a structured, risk-based response that protects the organization and its data. Incorrect approaches analysis. Ignoring the vulnerability or delaying action indefinitely is a direct violation of the duty of care and can lead to significant security breaches, data loss, and regulatory penalties. This failure to act proactively demonstrates a disregard for established security protocols and risk management principles. Implementing a patch without proper testing or communication can lead to unintended consequences, such as service outages or further system instability. This haphazard approach can exacerbate the problem and create new security risks, while also potentially violating service-level agreements or regulatory requirements related to service continuity. Disclosing the vulnerability and the organization's specific remediation plans to unauthorized external parties before a controlled rollout or public announcement can create opportunities for attackers to exploit the situation further. This premature or uncontrolled disclosure is a significant security and ethical failure, potentially leading to reputational damage and increased risk. Professional reasoning. Professionals in cybersecurity operations must adopt a structured, risk-based decision-making process. This involves 1. Understanding the threat landscape and the specific vulnerabilities identified. 2. Assessing the potential impact and likelihood of exploitation within the organization's environment. 3. Evaluating available mitigation strategies, considering their effectiveness, feasibility, and potential side effects. 4. Consulting relevant internal policies, procedures, and external regulatory requirements. 5. Prioritizing actions based on risk reduction and business continuity. 6. Ensuring clear and timely communication with all relevant stakeholders. This systematic approach ensures that security measures are effective, compliant, and aligned with organizational objectives. Question 13. Comparative studies suggest that organizations often face dilemmas in responding to sophisticated ransomware attacks. When a critical system is encrypted and operational capabilities are severely degraded, what is the most appropriate initial course of action for a CyberOps professional operating under U.S. regulatory frameworks, focusing on core security technologies and incident response? Option A. Immediately initiate system restoration from the most recent known good backups, prioritizing the return to operational status, while simultaneously documenting the incident for subsequent forensic analysis and regulatory reporting. Option B. Engage directly with the threat actors to negotiate a ransom payment, leveraging communication channels established by cybersecurity incident response teams. Option C. Attempt to decrypt the affected systems using publicly available decryption tools, even if their efficacy is unconfirmed, to expedite recovery and minimize business disruption. Option D. Isolate the affected systems and begin a comprehensive forensic investigation to determine the attack vector and scope, delaying any restoration efforts until the investigation is complete. The correct answer is A. Immediately initiate system restoration from the most recent known good backups, prioritizing the return to operational status, while simultaneously documenting the incident for subsequent forensic analysis and regulatory reporting. Explanation. The scenario presents a common challenge in cybersecurity operations, balancing the need for rapid incident response with the requirement to adhere to established legal and regulatory frameworks. Specifically, the CBRCOR exam focuses on core security technologies and their operational application within a defined regulatory environment. In this context, the challenge lies in ensuring that actions taken during an active cyber incident do not inadvertently violate data privacy laws or compromise the integrity of evidence required for potential legal proceedings. The professional must make swift, informed decisions that prioritize both security and compliance. The correct approach represents best professional practice because it aligns with the principles of responsible incident response and legal due diligence. It emphasizes containment and eradication of the threat, while simultaneously initiating the process of evidence preservation and notification according to established protocols. This proactive stance minimizes potential damage, both to the organization's systems and its legal standing. Adherence to the specified regulatory framework, assumed to be U.S.-based for this exam context, as no other jurisdiction is specified, ensures that all actions are legally defensible and ethically sound, particularly concerning data breach notification and handling of sensitive information. An incorrect approach that prioritizes immediate system restoration without proper evidence preservation would fail to meet regulatory requirements for incident reporting and forensic analysis. This could lead to significant legal penalties and reputational damage. Another incorrect approach that involves unauthorized access or modification of systems outside the scope of the incident response plan would violate principles of system integrity and potentially legal statutes governing unauthorized access. A third incorrect approach that delays or omits required notifications to regulatory bodies or affected individuals would directly contravene data privacy laws, leading to severe consequences. Professionals should employ a decision-making framework that begins with a clear understanding of the incident response plan and relevant legal obligations. This involves immediate threat assessment, followed by a phased approach to containment, eradication, and recovery, with evidence preservation integrated at every step. Continuous communication with legal counsel and relevant stakeholders is crucial to ensure that actions remain compliant and ethically sound throughout the incident lifecycle. Question 14. Cost-benefit analysis shows that a critical security vulnerability has been identified in a core operational system, posing a significant risk of data exfiltration. While a complete patch will take 48 hours to develop and deploy, a temporary workaround can be implemented within 4 hours to reduce the immediate risk, but it may slightly degrade system performance. Business is demanding immediate restoration of full functionality to avoid substantial financial losses. Which course of action best balances operational needs with regulatory compliance and security best practices? Option A. Implement a superficial quick fix that appears to resolve the vulnerability but does not address the root cause, to restore full functionality immediately. Option B. Immediately restore full system functionality without any modification, prioritizing business continuity over potential security risks. Option C. Halt all system operations until the complete patch is developed and deployed, regardless of the business impact. Option D. Implement the temporary workaround within 4 hours, monitor system performance and security closely, and proceed with the full patch deployment within 48 hours. The correct answer is D. Implement the temporary workaround within 4 hours, monitor system performance and security closely, and proceed with the full patch deployment within 48 hours. Explanation. The scenario presents a common challenge in cybersecurity operations, balancing the immediate need for operational continuity with the long-term implications of security vulnerabilities. The professional challenge lies in making a decision that is not only technically sound, but also compliant with regulatory frameworks and ethical considerations, particularly when faced with pressure to restore services quickly. The CBRCOR exam focuses on core security technologies and their operational application, implying a need to understand how these technologies interact with business processes and regulatory requirements. The correct approach prioritizes a thorough risk assessment and remediation before full service restoration. This aligns with the principles of responsible security management, which emphasize proactive defense and minimizing potential harm. In the context of the U.S. regulatory framework, this approach is supported by guidelines from NIST, National Institute of Standards and Technology, such as the Cybersecurity Framework, which advocates for identifying, protecting, detecting, responding, and recovering. Specifically, the principle of respond and recover involves containing incidents and restoring capabilities in a manner that ensures security. Failure to address the root cause of a security incident, even if it means a temporary service disruption, can lead to further breaches, data loss, reputational damage, and significant financial penalties under regulations like HIPAA, Health Insurance Portability and Accountability Act. If patient data is involved, or SOX, Sarbanes-Oxley Act, if financial reporting is compromised. This approach demonstrates due diligence and a commitment to maintaining the integrity and confidentiality of systems and data. An incorrect approach would be to immediately restore full service without adequately addressing the identified vulnerability. This could be driven by a desire to minimize downtime and associated business losses, but it disregards the potential for the same vulnerability to be exploited again, leading to a more severe incident. From a regulatory perspective, this demonstrates a failure to implement appropriate safeguards and a lack of reasonable care in protecting sensitive information. For instance, under HIPAA, covered entities have a legal obligation to implement security measures to protect electronic protected health information, E5. Restoring services without patching a known vulnerability would violate the security incident procedures and risk analysis requirements, potentially leading to a breach that necessitates reporting and incurs substantial fines. Similarly, under SOX, organizations must maintain adequate internal controls over financial reporting, and a security lapse stemming from an unaddressed vulnerability could impact the reliability of financial data, leading to noncompliance. Another incorrect approach might involve implementing a quick, superficial fix that doesn't fully resolve the underlying issue. While seemingly addressing the immediate problem, This approach often leaves residual risks. It might pass an initial inspection, but fails to meet the spirit of regulatory requirements for robust security. This can be seen as a form of negligence, as it does not demonstrate a commitment to comprehensive security. The professional decision-making process in such situations should involve a structured risk management framework. This includes 1. Incident identification and assessment, clearly understanding the nature and impact of the vulnerability. 2. Risk evaluation, determining the likelihood and potential impact of exploitation. 3. Remediation planning, developing a plan to address the vulnerability, including temporary workarounds and permanent fixes. 4. Stakeholder communication, informing relevant parties about the situation, the proposed actions, and the expected impact on operations. 5. Execution and verification, implementing the remediation plan and verifying its effectiveness. 6. Post-incident review, analyzing the incident to improve future response and prevention capabilities. This systematic approach ensures that decisions are informed, defensible, and aligned with both business objectives and regulatory obligations. Question 15. To address the challenge of a suspected data exfiltration event involving sensitive customer information, a cybersecurity operations team has detected unusual outbound network traffic. The team needs to determine the most appropriate immediate course of action to ensure both effective incident response and strict adherence to the regulatory framework governing data protection and breach notification. Option A. Engage the legal and compliance departments to review the situation and potential regulatory obligations, while simultaneously initiating preliminary containment measures and evidence preservation. Option B. Immediately block all outbound traffic from the affected systems and initiate a full system forensic image without consulting legal or compliance teams, prioritizing technical containment above all else. Option C. Publicly announce a potential data breach to inform customers and stakeholders immediately, while simultaneously attempting to isolate the affected systems. Option D. Wait for a complete and definitive understanding of the scope and impact of the exfiltration before taking any containment or notification actions to avoid premature or incorrect responses. The correct answer is B. Immediately block all outbound traffic from the affected systems and initiate a full system forensic image without consulting legal or compliance teams, prioritizing technical containment above all else. Explanation. The scenario presents a common challenge in cybersecurity operations, balancing the need for rapid incident response with the imperative to adhere to established regulatory frameworks. The professional challenge lies in making swift, informed decisions under pressure, ensuring that actions taken during an incident do not inadvertently violate data protection laws or internal security policies, which are often codified by regulatory requirements. The CBRCOR exam focuses on core security technologies and their operational application, implying a need to understand how these technologies interact with legal and regulatory mandates. The correct approach represents best professional practice because it prioritizes a systematic, documented, and compliant response. By engaging the legal and compliance teams early, the organization ensures that its actions are aligned with relevant regulations, such as those governing data breach notification and evidence handling. This proactive engagement minimizes the risk of regulatory penalties, reputational damage, and legal repercussions. It also ensures that the incident response is thorough and that all necessary steps are taken to contain, eradicate, and recover from the incident in a manner that preserves evidence for potential forensic analysis and legal proceedings, all within the bounds of the specified regulatory framework. An incorrect approach that involves immediate public disclosure without proper legal review fails to acknowledge the sensitive nature of the data potentially compromised and the legal obligations surrounding such disclosures. This could lead to premature release of information that could be exploited by adversaries or violate data privacy regulations, resulting in significant fines and loss of customer trust. Another incorrect approach, focusing solely on technical remediation without involving legal or compliance, risks overlooking critical data handling requirements or evidence preservation needs mandated by regulations. This could render forensic investigations ineffective and lead to non-compliance with breach notification timelines. A third incorrect approach, delaying any action until a full, detailed understanding of the incident is achieved, is professionally unacceptable in a time-sensitive incident. While thoroughness is important, an indefinite delay in response can exacerbate the damage, lead to further data compromise, and violate regulatory requirements for timely incident handling and notification. Professionals should employ a decision-making framework that integrates technical expertise with an understanding of the legal and regulatory landscape. This involves establishing clear incident response plans that outline communication channels with legal and compliance departments, defining roles and responsibilities, and incorporating regulatory requirements into every stage of the response. When faced with an incident, the immediate steps should include initial containment, followed by prompt consultation with relevant stakeholders, including legal counsel and compliance officers, to guide subsequent actions in a compliant manner. Question 16. Operational review demonstrates a critical security incident involving a suspected exfiltration of sensitive customer data from a cloud-based application. The incident response team has identified the likely source of the breach and has the capability to immediately isolate the affected systems to prevent further data loss. However, the standard operating procedure for such incidents requires a formal risk assessment and notification to legal and compliance departments before any containment actions are taken. What is the most appropriate course of action for the incident response team to perform CyberOps using core security technologies in this situation? Option A. Proceed with a comprehensive risk assessment and await explicit authorization from the legal and compliance departments before taking any containment actions to ensure full adherence to established procedures. Option B. Focus solely on technical remediation of the identified vulnerability, assuming that preventing further exfiltration will be addressed by other teams after the immediate technical fix is complete. Option C. Immediately isolate the affected systems to prevent further data exfiltration, while simultaneously initiating the formal incident response process, including notification to legal and compliance, and documenting all actions taken. Option D. Isolate the affected systems without any formal documentation or notification, prioritizing the immediate cessation of data loss above all other considerations. The correct answer is C. Immediately isolate the affected systems to prevent further data exfiltration, while simultaneously initiating the formal incident response process, including notification to legal and compliance, and documenting all actions taken. Explanation. The scenario presents a common challenge in cybersecurity operations, balancing the need for rapid incident response with the imperative to adhere to established regulatory frameworks. The professional challenge lies in the potential for a critical security incident to necessitate immediate action that might, at first glance, appear to deviate from standard operating procedures or data handling policies. However, the CBRCOR exam, focusing on core security technologies and operational practices, implicitly requires adherence to a robust security posture that is informed by regulatory compliance. The correct approach must demonstrate an understanding that even under pressure, security operations must be conducted within a framework that ensures accountability, data integrity, and legal compliance. The correct approach represents best professional practice because it prioritizes a structured, documented, and compliant response. This aligns with the principles of responsible incident management, which are often codified in regulatory guidelines. By initiating a formal incident response process involving relevant stakeholders and ensuring proper documentation, the organization maintains a clear audit trail, facilitates post-incident analysis, and demonstrates due diligence to regulatory bodies. This proactive and systematic method minimizes the risk of further compromise, legal repercussions, or reputational damage. An incorrect approach that involves immediate, undocumented system isolation without proper authorization or notification fails to meet regulatory requirements for incident reporting and data handling. This could lead to a violation of data privacy laws if sensitive information is involved, as it bypasses established protocols for data containment and notification. Another incorrect approach, such as delaying the response to conduct a full risk assessment before any action, is professionally unacceptable in a critical incident scenario. This inaction could exacerbate the security breach, leading to greater data loss or system compromise, and would likely be viewed as a failure to exercise due care and diligence, potentially violating regulatory obligations to protect data and systems. Finally, an approach that focuses solely on technical remediation without considering the legal and compliance implications of the incident, and the response would be deficient. This oversight could result in non-compliance with reporting mandates or data breach notification laws. Professionals should employ a decision-making framework that begins with immediate threat assessment and containment, followed by a rapid escalation to the formal incident response team. This team should then activate predefined playbooks that incorporate regulatory requirements for notification, documentation, and evidence preservation. The framework emphasizes clear communication, defined roles and responsibilities, and a commitment to maintaining compliance throughout the incident lifecycle. Question 17. Governance review demonstrates that a critical vulnerability has been identified in a widely used server application, with active exploitation observed in the wild. The organization's standard change management process requires a minimum of 72 hours for patch deployment approval and testing, which is insufficient given the immediate threat. The cybersecurity operations team has the technical capability to deploy the patch within 4 hours. What is the most appropriate immediate course of action for the cybersecurity operations team? Option A. Escalate the issue to senior management for a decision on how to proceed, without providing a specific remediation plan. Option B. Convene a cross-functional committee to thoroughly analyze the vulnerability impact and potential solutions before any action is taken. Option C. Initiate an emergency change request process, documenting the vulnerability criticality and the proposed rapid deployment, seeking expedited approval from relevant stakeholders. Option D. Immediately deploy the patch to all affected systems without any prior notification or approval to mitigate the risk of exploitation. The correct answer is C. Initiate an emergency change request process, documenting the vulnerability criticality and the proposed rapid deployment, seeking expedited approval from relevant stakeholders. Explanation. Scenario analysis. This scenario presents a common challenge in cybersecurity operations where a newly discovered vulnerability requires immediate action, but the organization's established change management processes are rigid and time-consuming. The professional challenge lies in balancing the urgency of patching a critical vulnerability against the need to adhere to established security controls and operational stability. Delaying the patch risks exploitation, while bypassing procedures could lead to unintended system disruptions or compliance violations. The CBRCOR exam focuses on performing cyber operations using core security technologies, implying a need for practical, compliant, and effective incident response and vulnerability management. Correct approach analysis. The correct approach involves initiating an emergency change request process. This is best professional practice because it acknowledges the critical nature of the vulnerability while still attempting to follow a structured, albeit expedited, process. This aligns with the principles of responsible vulnerability management and incident response, which are core to performing cyber operations. It demonstrates an understanding that while security is paramount, operational integrity and compliance with governance frameworks are also essential. This approach seeks to minimize risk by documenting the deviation and obtaining necessary approvals, even under pressure. It reflects a mature security posture that can adapt to urgent threats without completely abandoning governance. Incorrect approach is analysis. Applying the patch immediately without any form of notification or approval bypasses the organization's established change management procedures. This is a significant regulatory and ethical failure. It undermines the governance framework designed to ensure system stability and security, potentially leading to unforeseen consequences like service outages or conflicts with other systems. It also fails to provide an audit trail for the change, which is crucial for compliance and incident investigation. Escalating the issue to senior management for a decision without proposing a clear, actionable plan for remediation is inefficient and delays critical action. While escalation is sometimes necessary, it should be a step taken after initial assessment and proposed solutions are formulated. This approach represents a failure in proactive problem-solving and operational efficiency, potentially leaving the organization exposed for longer than necessary. Forming a committee to discuss the vulnerability impact and potential solutions indefinitely is a classic example of analysis paralysis. This approach is a severe ethical and regulatory failure, as it demonstrates a lack of urgency and accountability in the face of a clear and present danger to the organization's assets. It prioritizes deliberation over action, directly contravening the core responsibility of performing cyber operations to protect systems. Professional reasoning. Professionals facing such a situation should first assess the severity and exploitability of the vulnerability. Then, they should consult their organization's incident response and change management policies. The decision-making process should prioritize risk mitigation, which often involves a rapid assessment of the potential impact of both the vulnerability and the proposed remediation. Documenting all actions, communications, and decisions is paramount for accountability and compliance. When standard procedures are insufficient for urgent threats, invoking emergency procedures or seeking expedited approvals is the professional course of action, ensuring a balance between speed and control. Question 18. Stakeholder feedback indicates a critical zero-day vulnerability has been discovered in a widely used third-party software library integrated into several core business applications. The vendor has acknowledged the vulnerability, but has not yet provided a definitive patch release date, only stating it is a high priority. The IT security team is concerned about potential exploitation, while the business operations team is worried about any disruption to critical services. What is the most appropriate course of action for the cybersecurity operations team? Option A. Focus solely on monitoring network traffic for signs of exploitation and inform stakeholders that no immediate action can be taken until the vendor releases a patch. Option B. Deploy an emergency patch to all affected systems immediately without prior testing to ensure maximum protection against potential exploits. Option C. Escalate the issue to senior management and await further instructions, as patching third-party software is outside the direct control of the cybersecurity operations team. Option D. Immediately implement temporary network segmentation for affected systems and initiate a comprehensive vulnerability assessment to identify all instances of the vulnerable library, while simultaneously engaging the vendor for an estimated patch timeline and preparing an internal testing environment for potential vendor-provided patches. The correct answer is D. Immediately implement temporary network segmentation for affected systems and initiate a comprehensive vulnerability assessment to identify all instances of the vulnerable library, while simultaneously engaging the vendor for an estimated patch timeline and preparing an internal testing environment for potential vendor-provided patches. Explanation. Scenario analysis. This scenario presents a common challenge in cybersecurity operations where a critical vulnerability is discovered in a widely used third-party software component. The professional challenge lies in balancing the immediate need to protect the organization's assets with the operational impact of patching or mitigating the vulnerability. The urgency of the situation, coupled with potential disruption to business operations, requires a swift yet thorough decision-making process. The reliance on a third-party component adds complexity, as the organization has limited direct control over the remediation timeline. Correct approach analysis. The correct approach involves a multifaceted strategy that prioritizes risk reduction while minimizing operational disruption. This includes immediate containment measures, such as network segmentation or disabling affected functionalities, to limit the attack surface. Simultaneously, engaging with the vendor to understand their remediation plan and timeline is crucial. Developing an internal patching strategy, including testing, is also a best practice. This approach aligns with the principles of risk management and incident response, aiming to address the threat effectively without causing undue harm to ongoing operations. Regulatory frameworks, such as those governing data protection and operational resilience, implicitly require organizations to take reasonable steps to protect sensitive information and maintain service continuity, which this approach facilitates. Incorrect approaches analysis. One incorrect approach involves ignoring the vulnerability due to the perceived complexity of patching a third-party component. This is a significant regulatory and ethical failure. It demonstrates a disregard for the organization's responsibility to protect its systems and data, potentially violating data protection laws that mandate reasonable security measures. Ethically, it exposes the organization and its stakeholders to unacceptable risks. Another incorrect approach is to immediately deploy a patch without proper testing. This can lead to system instability, data corruption, or further security vulnerabilities, causing significant operational disruption. While attempting to be proactive, this approach fails to adhere to best practices in change management and incident response, which emphasize controlled and tested deployments. This could also lead to regulatory scrutiny if the untested patch causes a breach or service outage. A third incorrect approach is to solely rely on the vendor's timeline without implementing any interim mitigation strategies. This leaves the organization exposed to exploitation for an extended period. It fails to meet the standard of reasonable care expected in cybersecurity, potentially violating regulatory requirements for proactive risk management and incident preparedness. Professional reasoning. Professionals should adopt a structured incident response and risk management framework. This involves 1. Rapid assessment of the vulnerability impact and exploitability. 2. Implementation of immediate containment measures. 3. Proactive communication with vendors and internal stakeholders. 4. Development and testing of remediation plans. 5. Post-incident review and continuous improvement. This systematic approach ensures that decisions are informed, risks are managed, and regulatory compliance is maintained. Question 19. Consider a scenario where a financial services firm detects unusual outbound network traffic from a critical customer database server, indicating a potential data exfiltration event. The incident response team has identified the source of the traffic, but has not yet determined the full scope or nature of the data being accessed. The firm operates under strict financial regulations that mandate the protection of customer financial information and require specific procedures for handling data breaches. The team is under pressure to immediately stop the exfiltration and secure the data. Which of the following actions best represents the most appropriate and legally compliant response for the CyberOps team? Option A. Initiate a full system wipe of the affected server to ensure no further data can be exfiltrated, and then begin an investigation into the cause. Option B. Immediately block all outbound traffic from the entire network segment where the server resides to prevent any further data loss, without specific analysis of the affected server. Option C. Continue to monitor the traffic passively for an extended period to gather as much information as possible about the exfiltrated data before taking any action, to avoid alerting the attacker. Option D. Immediately disconnect the affected server from the network to halt all outbound traffic. Then proceed with forensic imaging and analysis of the server's logs and memory, while simultaneously notifying legal counsel to guide further actions. Correct answer is D. Immediately disconnect the affected server from the network to halt all outbound traffic, then proceed with forensic imaging and analysis of the server's logs and memory, while simultaneously notifying legal counsel to guide further actions. Explanation. The scenario presents a common challenge in cybersecurity operations, balancing the need for rapid incident response with the imperative to adhere to established legal and regulatory frameworks. The professional challenge lies in the potential for immediate data compromise versus the requirement for proper evidence handling and legal authorization, particularly when dealing with sensitive customer data. The CBRCOR exam focuses on core security technologies and their operational application, which inherently includes understanding the legal and ethical boundaries of these operations. The correct approach emphasizes a structured, legally compliant response. This involves immediate containment to prevent further damage, followed by a meticulous process of data preservation and analysis under the guidance of legal counsel and in accordance with relevant regulations. This aligns with best professional practices by ensuring that while the incident is addressed, the integrity of potential evidence is maintained and legal obligations are met. This minimizes the risk of legal repercussions, reputational damage, and the compromise of sensitive information. An incorrect approach that involves immediate, unauthorized access and deletion of data without proper documentation or legal oversight would constitute a significant regulatory and ethical failure. This could violate data privacy laws, e.g., if customer PII is involved, breach contractual obligations with clients, and undermine the principle of due process if the data is later required for legal proceedings. Such actions could lead to severe penalties, including fines, lawsuits, and loss of trust. Another incorrect approach, such as delaying response significantly to await exhaustive legal review for every minor action, would be professionally unsound. While legal compliance is crucial, an undue delay in containment can lead to irreversible data loss or system compromise, failing the primary duty of protecting organizational assets and customer data. This demonstrates a lack of risk assessment and operational agility. The professional decision-making process in such situations should involve a rapid assessment of the incident's severity and potential impact, followed by immediate activation of the incident response plan. This plan should clearly delineate roles and responsibilities, including when and how to engage legal counsel and relevant authorities. The focus should be on containment and preservation, with all actions meticulously logged and justified. Professionals must understand that operational security and legal compliance are not mutually exclusive, but are interdependent components of effective cybersecurity. Question 20. Market research demonstrates that organizations are increasingly targeted by sophisticated ransomware attacks that encrypt critical operational data. In response to such an attack, a cybersecurity operations team has identified the affected systems. The primary business objective is to restore operations as quickly as possible to minimize financial losses. The team is considering several immediate actions. Which of the following actions best balances the need for rapid operational recovery with the imperative to comply with data protection regulations and maintain investigative integrity? Option A. Proceed with wiping and re-imaging all affected systems using standard operating system images, and then restore data from available backups, assuming the backups are unaffected. Option B. Isolate the affected systems, create forensic images of the primary affected servers and any accessible backup media, and then engage legal counsel and the compliance department to guide further remediation steps. Option C. Focus solely on restoring services using cloud-based disaster recovery solutions, bypassing any on-premises systems that may still contain evidence of the attack. Option D. Immediately initiate a full system restore from the most recent clean backup, without performing any forensic analysis on the affected systems or the backup data. Correct answer is D. Immediately initiate a full system restore from the most recent clean backup, without performing any forensic analysis on the affected systems or the backup data. Explanation. Scenario analysis. This scenario presents a common challenge in cybersecurity operations, balancing the need for rapid incident response with the imperative to adhere to strict regulatory compliance. The pressure to restore services quickly can lead to shortcuts that may inadvertently violate data privacy laws or compromise the integrity of evidence. The professional challenge lies in making informed decisions under duress, ensuring that immediate actions do not create long-term legal or operational liabilities. The complexity arises from the interconnectedness of technical actions and their legal ramifications, requiring a nuanced understanding of both domains. Correct approach analysis. The correct approach prioritizes the preservation of evidence and adherence to established incident response protocols that are aligned with regulatory frameworks. This involves isolating affected systems without altering their state, documenting all actions meticulously, and engaging the appropriate legal and compliance teams early in the process. This method ensures that any subsequent investigation or remediation is based on accurate, untainted data, and that all actions taken are defensible from a legal and regulatory standpoint. Specifically, this aligns with the principles of data minimization and lawful processing of personal data, as mandated by regulations like GDPR, if this were the specified jurisdiction. The focus is on a controlled, documented, and legally sound response, which is the hallmark of best professional practice in cybersecurity incident management. Incorrect approaches analysis. One incorrect approach involves immediately wiping and rebuilding affected systems without proper forensic imaging. This action, while seemingly efficient for restoring service, destroys critical evidence that could be vital for understanding the attack vector, identifying the perpetrator, and meeting regulatory reporting requirements. This failure to preserve evidence directly contravenes principles of due diligence and can lead to significant penalties under data protection laws for failing to adequately investigate and report a breach. Another incorrect approach is to solely rely on vendor-provided automated remediation tools without independent verification or forensic analysis. While these tools can be helpful, they may not be designed to preserve forensic data or may inadvertently alter system states in ways that compromise evidence. This can lead to a situation where the organization cannot definitively prove compliance with data breach notification laws or demonstrate that all necessary steps were taken to secure data, potentially resulting in regulatory fines and reputational damage. A third incorrect approach is to delay reporting the incident to internal legal and compliance teams, focusing only on technical recovery. This delay can lead to missed reporting deadlines mandated by regulations, such as those requiring notification within a specific timeframe after discovering a breach. Such a failure to comply with notification timelines is a direct regulatory violation and can result in severe penalties, as well as erode trust with affected parties and regulatory bodies. Professional reasoning. Professionals facing such a scenario should employ a structured decision-making process. First, activate the predefined incident response plan. Second, prioritize evidence preservation and containment over immediate restoration if there is a conflict. Third, engage legal counsel and compliance officers immediately to ensure all actions are legally sound and compliant with relevant regulations. Fourth, maintain detailed, chronological logs of all activities and decisions. Finally, conduct a thorough post-incident review to identify lessons learned and update incident response plans accordingly. This systematic approach ensures that technical expertise is applied within a robust legal and ethical framework.